presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com. We are InGoal Radio, the podcast. Darren Millard back with you. And a little gravelly. It's early in the morning. That's what I'm going to chalk it up to. Along with Kevin Woodley and David Hutchison. I have missed you guys so much, and I couldn't even talk to you because of laryngitis. And I'm happy again.
It's nice to hear you're in your early morning whiskey drinking
Exactly.
phase.
Ouch.
I don't have a headache, and I'm still getting the whiskey feeling. Like it's awesome.
It's just good to have you back, my friend.
Hutch, you know the whiskey thing. Like you, how many times have you and I got up early and had a nice stiff tumbler full of the happy juice?
I'm pretty sure the answer for me is 0, Darren, but I've definitely had the bedroom voice in the morning.
Wow. So we're on the road here. It should be like back to 100%, but I've been saying that for weeks. Looking forward to chatting with Steve Thompson, the director of goaltending for USA Hockey. Also getting into our gear segment, which is going to focus on the TRUE PX4 Hzrdus line, and that's coming up in just a little bit. But let's give a shout out over to our friends at the Hockey Shop and Sense Arena.
Yeah, first and foremost, the Hockey Shop with all the new gear coming in. We got another set today that we talk about with PX4 and the Hzrdus. There's the new Warrior G7 coming soon. You've probably seen the Bauer Customizer is live now for their new Shadow line. So it's that time of year, folks, where everything is starting to come in. And there are always changes with this new gear, subtle little things. You'll hear us when we talk about the Hzrdus line, how it fits, maybe different than other brands. You need to make sure you have those answers before you buy the new gear. And there's no better place to get it than from Cam and the rest of the goalies over at the Hockey Shop. This isn't, a big box store that just hires some high school kid off the street. Everybody that works in the goalie department, they are all goalies. They're all passionate about the position. They all know the equipment. They all know different styles, different ways of playing, and what type of equipment might fit your game. So if you want to make sure amongst all this new gear that's coming, you get the stuff that works for you, whether it's sizing or style, make sure you check out the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com to get the gear that's going to help you make more
It
saves.
just occurred to me, if you need a goaltender at the last minute in the Lower Mainland, call the Hockey Shop and just ask for the goalie department. And whoever answers the phone, they'll be able to maybe fill in for you. Like that?
May have done that once or twice, Darren, on a couple last minute cancellations for some of the skates I take part in. May have reached out to Cam and said, hey, does anyone on the crew want to take this skate? Now, the one challenge is they are all younger, so many of them are not old enough to qualify for some of my skates. But I may have done that because they are all goalies, and they have filled in for me at some of the various sort of invite-only skates that I take part in over the course of the summer or during the season. Where they need a goalie who's good and they want to get rid of me. That's what I call the Hockey Shop. Most of these kids can really
Nobody
play.
wants to get rid of you. Come on.
Well, I mean, I do make the shooters feel
Yeah. It's about building confidence, camaraderie with the shooters. Everybody feels better about themselves. What's happening over at NHL Sense Arena?
I don't think shooters are going to feel better about themselves if you happen to be a goaltender that's training with Sense Arena. So obviously Woody hasn't had it out enough. Darren, minor hockey seasons are finishing up roundabout now. I've heard of a lot of teams that are in the playoffs, maybe finishing playoffs. And you guys know that at InGoal, we're encouraging everybody to get out there and play some different sports this summer and this spring. But I know everybody's going to want to keep their hand in their goaltending just a little bit. And I've got 2 ways you can do that. One, why don't you spend 5 minutes a day looking through pro reads at ingoalmag.com? I think everybody should have an InGoal membership for their son or daughter, and they can check out the pro reads each week. But the other way you can is spend 20 minutes a day on Sense Arena. It's an incredible way to go if you want to do some training this spring. You got drills, you've got cool competitions, you've got NHL and PWHA shooters. You can play for your favorite NHL team. You can even recreate some cool drills that you've seen on InGoal using some of the things in Sense Arena, like their puck cannon that can precisely place the shots for you.
I've used that.
And it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's incredible. And it doesn't matter how nice the weather is, wherever you're going to be this summer. You can even train on an outdoor rink, Darren. So we really encourage 20 minutes a day. Sense Arena is a great way to do it. It's going to make a massive difference for you this season. Guys, 20 minutes a day, that's like 2 hours a week. That's a lot of time to focus on your goaltending, like a lot of people are lucky enough to do with private coaches. This is a really affordable way to get some great training. The best deal now is on at sensearena.com. Head over there, use the code IGM50, and you'll save even more. Try it.
IGM50.
Yeah, like in goal
Right.
mag 50. Yeah.
We were working on our outdoor rink in Vegas yesterday. It was snowing. Yeah.
Really?
In my backyard, it was snowing. Not a lot of flakes. Didn't have to shovel or anything. Didn't even have
That's
to brush
pretty
it
cool.
off. But there was snow. There are yearly little fluttering of flakes.
Just so you know, Darren, it's golf weather up here this weekend.
I hate you.
It's always golf weather on the island.
I hate you. And I despise you too. In like a very jealous angle.
Says the man
See-
living in Vegas.
Yeah, exactly. Now, listen, unfortunately for me, well, I guess not so much from a I keep working and make more money standpoint, but I won't be getting to golf anytime
No.
soon. Even with Thatcher Demko out for 2 to 4 weeks here, we're actually going to have playoff hockey in Vancouver, which I mean, I love. I love going to the rink when it's like 20 degrees out and sunny. That's Celsius for our American listeners. Sunny days. I got to do it last year in Seattle covering the playoffs for NHL.com down there, and I am looking forward to it here in Vancouver.
Yes.
Hoping, as the fans are, that number one goalie Thatcher Demko will, as the team believes, be back in time for the start of those Stanley Cup.
Okay, they've got enough of a cushion that it's realistic to think that they will hold off the Edmonton Oilers. But I must give a stick tap to Patrick Allvin and company for the move they made in the summer when Casey DeSmith was traded to Montreal and then acquired him from the Canadiens with a legitimate backup, or a backup, I should say, with more experience than Thatcher Demko has had in the last couple of years. And it's helped throughout the season, but now it's got the opportunity to pay some big time dividends.
Yeah, not just for the Vancouver Canucks, but for Casey DeSmith himself, right? Like, he's shown throughout this season that he can be the guy that plays well when he only plays every 2 weeks. Now he gets a chance to show that he can be the guy that plays well for 2 weeks straight, right? And like, your ideal for an NHL team looking for a backup is find you one that does both, right? As the kids like to say. And this is an opportunity for him. Now, the challenge for DeSmith heading into the offseason and unrestricted free agency is his numbers got hammered by that game in Minnesota where they lost 10-7, 2 were empty nets. So he gives up 8. I believe 3 were on 5-on-3s, another 2 power play goals. Didn't give up a bad goal in the game. It was all high danger, but 7 of 8 high danger chances, mostly on the 5-on-3 go in. And like, you just can't, even with this 2 to 3, maybe 4 week run of playing as the starter for Casey DeSmith, it's really hard, given how little he's played to this point, to dig yourself out statistically from an 8-goal game against. So that's a challenge statistically, but he'll be in the spotlight here, and that's a chance for him to remind general managers around the league of the good work he'd done up until that point, even if that game wasn't on him, and that he's capable again of being a guy who can give you, temporary starter minutes as opposed to just a guy who relieves the starter every 14 days.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited for Casey DeSmith. I'm excited for the Vancouver Canucks to be in this situation and be prepared and not have people jumping down their throat with criticism. I think it's not a perfect situation, but I think it adds to the feel-good story of the Vancouver Canucks when things could go awry, and they're prepared for it and being able to excel beyond that.
Well, and I think there's enough educated people in the market to recognize, like, for example, his first start after Demko goes down, they're up to a 3-0 lead. They lose 4-3 to the Avalanche in overtime. And he made some really good saves to have the 3-0 lead. But as things fell apart, you can't get outshot 17-3 in the third period by the Colorado Avalanche playing the second half of back-to-backs when you're the rested team. And there's at least enough education in this marketplace now. I'm not sure there always was, to recognize that, hey, that ain't on the goalie. So, when we talk about, environments and measuring performance relative to environment, I think people start to understand those things and not just look at that game in isolation and say, oh man, they're in trouble without Thatcher Demko because this is what happened the first game they didn't have him. There's a recognition that the team kind of folded on that night. And yeah, maybe the goalie wasn't able to completely bail them out. I think Casey now has points in something like 17 or of 22 starts, like in terms of at least getting them points and getting them to overtime. And again, like I said, Yoey's only given up 2 low percentage goals all season. To me, what more could you ask for out of a backup? Like, that's what you want. Just don't give up bad goals.
I'm excited, really, really pumped up for him. There's a couple of pushes taking place in the Western Conference, specifically right now. Minnesota and St. Louis charging back into contention, trying to save their season. And is that just based on improved goaltending or raised level of goaltending, Woody?
Well, I'd certainly say in St. Louis's case that's a part of it, right? Jordan Binnington, like speaking of pushes, we now have a new leader as we record this on Friday, March 15th, atop the goals saved above expected race from Clearsight Analytics in Jordan Binnington. Nobody in the league. He finally passed Jacob Markstrom, had sort of lapped the field. He was and remains still ahead of Connor Hellebuck, ahead of Thatcher Demko, ahead of Igor Shesterkin, ahead of Jeremy Swayman, guys that, sort of get mentioned in the Vezina conversation. Markstrom's been above them, pretty much since Christmas on. Jordan Binnington's finally caught him. Binner's been on a real tear. And I should point out, on the nights that Jordan Binnington isn't starting, Joel Hofer is giving them really good goaltending as well. Obviously, he's not going to have the cumulative stats, which is what goals saved above expected is. The more you get to play, the more chance you have to build that in the positive or negative direction. But sort of the more on a per shot basis, which is sort of your save percentage differential. Joel Hofer, 16th in the NHL at plus 1%, right there, slightly above guys like Sergei Bobrovsky and Ilya Sorokin and Connor Ingram, who are getting a lot more sort of love for their play. Hofer kind of sneaking under the radar. So for the Blues, Binnington, frankly, playing his way into the Vezina Trophy conversation, at least, even if it's Hellebuck's to lose, he should be in that conversation now. And on nights when he can't go, Hofer's giving them what they need. So it'd be interesting to see if they can make that push.
And Marc-Andre Fleury and the Minnesota Wild, they made that incredible decision, John Hines, to pull Marc-Andre in overtime, risking the point, but it worked, scoring 4 on 3. And it seems to have developed some enthusiasm around the hockey club.
Yeah, and listen, like this sort of, there's that in isolation, but also just the decision to keep Marc-Andre Fleury as their goaltender. He's now starting, ahead of, on a pretty consistent basis, Philip Gustafsson, and he's on a roll. And this is, around the trade deadline when people were asking me about Marc-Andre Fleury, was he a viable option for teams? What did he have left in the tank? I kept saying, like, his numbers, his adjusted numbers were really good, and they were good throughout. You just couldn't see it in the raw numbers because he was getting the backup starts. He was getting the second end of back-to-back when the team gets in the middle of the night and they're not going to have any legs. He was getting the tough opponents. Like, he was being, not say set up to fail, but that's the nature of the gig. And he was, again, you wouldn't see it in your day-to-day NHL.com stats, but the underlying numbers showed he was still playing at a very high level. Since they sort of decided to keep him and not trade him and make sure he was sort of part of their stretch drive, he's been really good for it. Like, he's performing top 10 in the National Hockey League during this stretch. And over the last, if you sort of narrow that gap for the last 6 weeks, his numbers are even more impressive. Top 6 in the NHL, almost plus 4%. So Marc-Andre Fleury is not done for sure. And the way he's playing right now, he's given the Minnesota Wild a chance to get into a playoff race nobody saw them being a part of.
A couple of feel-good stories, Hutch, with those two guys getting themselves back into relevance in the National Hockey League as far as a playoff surge goes.
Don't we love hearing those names? And I'm excited for Fleury. Above all others, he's just so fun to watch. And every time we think he's down, he finds a way to come back. And as you say, not only be relevant, but be a leader in the league. So yeah, no, that's awesome. I loved that they pulled him in overtime. Frankly, Darren, I know you and I disagree, but I hate that they have the rule that you could lose the point for pulling your goalie in overtime.
Why wouldn't everybody do that if there was no risk?
Well, because the risk is you lose the game. The risk is you're handing the game to the other team. I think it would give us more opportunities for some exciting hockey, which is what we saw the other night. And Is this the only time it's ever happened? I'm not sure if that's true, but it got to be close to it. So if the rule is there to try and create some excitement, it's not doing that. It's shutting it down and making things more boring, and anything that takes the risk out of the game is no fun. So let's have some more fun and get rid of that
This
rule.
is the biggest disagreement we've ever had.
It's just going to come to blows, isn't it? It's a good thing we're over Zoom here, or we might have to.
Woody, can you talk for a little bit? Because it's getting too tense.
Too heated.
For the record, just based on the nature of Darren's voice, like, he sounds tougher, so I think he's winning this one regardless. Like, you know, like I'm picturing him with bruises and scars coming on over to lean on somebody who hasn't paid a debt. You know, absolutely.
With my whiskey in my hand.
Listen, exactly. In one hand, crowbar in the other. Another name that me and Hutch talked about last week while you were away, Darren, who we were happy to see him back, and he's come back in a big way. Freddie Anderson's been really good. So you talk about good stories that are near the top of these adjusted save percentage lists. Freddie Anderson almost plus 4% since he came back from the blood clots. Has, I know, tiny sample, absolutely, but he's been really, really good for Carolina, and that bodes well for them because Kochetkov kind of found his legs and looks like he's an option for them as well. All of a sudden, they've got a ton of depth in goal. Spencer Martin's been good for them, but Freddie Anderson has been exceptional since coming back. And I think just because we know Freddie the person, we're all happy to, first off, to see him back, but then to see him have success as well is it's really nice.
My rival, David Hutchison, is going to be by with the parent segment in just a little bit. But first, let's slide over to the hockey shop and bring in the gear segment, Woody.
Yeah, I think we just let him have it. Cam, it's on him. Tell us all about the TRUE PX4 Hzrdus, because we don't test this gear, so we rely on Cam. Little subtle shot.
It's up to you, Cam.
Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, source for sports. I'm here with Cam Matwiv over in Goalie Utopia. We've got some TRUE Hzrdus PX4. Now, Cam, we haven't tested any TRUE stuff since they made the switch, so I'm leaning heavily on you for what's new. And frankly, at this point, it's been so long, where we are compared to the old iterations.
For sure. I mean, for starters, classic goalie, as usual. We have something that's spelled completely wrong to create the name. It's Hzrdus. We'll let that show up on screen right there. Yeah, I mean...
Listen. Do you think
classic.
the full spelling fits on there? I like it. This is...
It could. Maybe. Who knows? Anyway, back to this stuff. So we're coming off of that L 20.2 pad. So now what we're seeing in the Hzrdus that's different, one of the biggest things that stands out is the thinned out thigh rise. So we saw this come out on the PX3 pad. It's on the Catalyst line. So that thinned out thigh rise, that's helping create that easier cross in the lower stance.
Right.
As a result, quite stiff up top, because as soon as we thin that out, we need to have that, again, stiffer upper part.
But that's what I always thought of along the L, sort of that line, that 20.2, like that line was always sort of a straighter, stiffer pad, no?
Correct. And we can really kind of see that. I mean, nice soft boot, but again, quite rigid all the way throughout the pad. Okay. Now, there's some new nice custom options, though, in terms of for the pad that's on the customizer itself. So again, if you did like that thicker top, you actually still get that in this as well. So you can kind of build out that little bit of that older pad to create, again, what you're exactly looking for in terms of your...
Well, that's what we see a lot at the National Hockey League level is sort of goalies that, as much as Lefebvre continues to evolve the TRUE pad and come up with new options, a lot of the guys just sort of stick with their old. It's sort of something that was always thus.
Yes. Well, I mean, when you're, betting a $9 million a year contract on it, probably going to want to stick with what you know.
Yes.
Okay. Boot. And something quite interesting. TRUE and Lefebvre have come up with their new toe tie system. The great news is you can still get the old one on the customizer.
You're not a fan, I see.
I think it's great.
I do. Listen, okay, you're going to explain it to me. I can see there's a lot of non-elastic here. I like the fact that there's, a fixed sort of gap here for your skates.
Correct. So in your reverse VH situation, that is creating that gap. That's making it a little bit easier to have that post integration.
We should have got a tape measure. We could have measured whether it's the actual proper length.
Hey, fair enough.
1/3 the diameter of a post, I believe. 2/3 the diameter of a post. That's what it is. So check it InGoalMag.com. We had one with Thatcher Demko where they actually did the math on how long this should be for toe box information.
We'll add the measurement somewhere in there. So the whole concept behind this guy is that you still will wrap this in and around your skate. You still get the elasticity up at the end where you actually have that Velcro, but that give isn't until underneath the skate. So, I mean, there is some science behind this thing, but it's...
I mean, essentially to me, it's basically tying knots without having to tie knots.
Yeah.
Like this is like a skate lace with knots, except they've built in the knot tie.
And if you're a traditionalist and you really just...
And you get the Velcro at the end, so you don't have to
and
lace
if you
it.
like just skate lace, you can get that on the customizers.
Okay.
So-
Rest of the boot. Let's move on.
Flat tabletop boot design.
Okay. Flat tabletop boot design, which means the fit, it sits up high on the skate.
Correct.
How does this vary compared to other brands, other models in terms of fit? It sits taller, so you should be cognizant of not ordering your old size, or?
Well, Trues remain somewhat consistent, so if you're still coming out an L like 20.2 pad, I mean, this is going to be the same still. And then even on the Catalyst, you still have that same flat tabletop boot. So if you're already familiar with True to a point, you're rocking still a very similar size.
If I was in a PX3 with a channel still in the boot, there'd be a difference?
You invented something cool that I can't get.
It doesn't exist?
No.
So all their pads are all flat. There is
All
no
the flat
channel.
tabletop boot design.
Okay, if I'm coming from CCM and I've got a channel in my boot,
So there might be
Half
some
inch?
sizing discrepancies, and the best way to do that will be actually get the pad, fully on your leg. Now, in terms of for accommodating this, in terms of how it sits, so that obviously is quite a bit different from some of the other pads that are on the wall about how high it sits up on the skate naturally. So things like the addition of a bootstrap and stuff like that can affect the sizing a little bit in terms of for where exactly you're at. Normally, through Trues, they have been fitting a little on the bigger side. However, say you're coming from a CCM, I would still start, say, a 33 in this. Whether or not the right plus sizing is there for you and things like that, that's all yet to be determined once you actually size the pad up on your leg.
assuming you're 33 in both is what you're saying. You started.
So I'd start there first. Doesn't necessarily mean you're being 100%, but again, those different factors of how you're strapping the pad and whatnot, even if you're taking that outer knee flap out, strapping down behind to the calf and stuff like that, that's all going to affect the sizing of this pad too as well.
Speaking of the knee, not much has changed there. Do you like the thin nylon strap, less likely to gather behind your knee? It's a little bit of wiggle room in that in that knee stack. So haven't sort of fully adopted where other brands have gone to making sure that's more of a rigid fixed edge.
Still your fast rotation system too as well. It makes its return.
Popular.
Great fit, easy adjustment. Nice wide open leg channel when you do kind of open this up. Good overall feel. I mean, the one thing about these nylon straps that you've kind of touched on a little while ago was how much of a fixed point that creates for the pad as well in terms of for when you're dropping in rotation out of it. So
as opposed to elastic where you can sort of, it still has some give and you can maybe come out of the pad.
Correct.
Especially on a knee stack that maybe, isn't quite as... If you're using a bigger knee pad on this knee stack, you might need to make sure that you've got a fixed endpoint to prevent that from coming off.
For sure. Okay. Glove and blocker.
Okay.
So
this is a stiff.
Yes. Yeah. Let's clarify. 100%
Stiff, somewhat
stiff.
straight. This one's got a break in it, but still somewhat of a straight pad relative to the other line.
Exactly. And then again, through custom, you can again set that up to exactly the way you want it.
Okay. Gloves. I'm obviously holding a 581.
580 what? 580.
580. This is what happened.
Their standard angles make their return. So 580, 590. And you can also get a 600. This is the PX3, but we're just using it as an example.
I noticed skate lace in my pocket here. That's standard.
You can get whatever you want, but we make it standard here at the Hockey Shop. So not too much different to talk about the gloves. There's a bit of a change in terms of on the back end, in terms of how they cut it. But overall, pretty much the exact same thing. What has changed a little bit, and you actually have to kind of zoom in on this a little bit more to be able to see the differences. Walker's actually cut a little bit different, and it feels a little bit lighter overall. I don't know the exact weight, but Kevin's now holding a PX3. The side wall has been cut a little bit more different. We can see that angle difference here and here. Overall feel-wise, I find that this is actually a little bit more balanced too as well. Yeah, I think it's actually a little bit of an improvement over the Blocker. So it's a small refinement, but you definitely can feel it when you put it on your hand.
615. 595.
Yes.
Differences being?
We were just talking about that.
No, hazard. Okay, obviously, I have a Catalyst and I have a Hzrdus, but in the past, there were different nomenclatures for bindingless or binding. Can you get that as well? Like this is the new.
Without binding, I believe, at custom. So binding is only available in the PX3.
So no longer can you get bindings. These are why I ask questions.
Yes.
They change names, they change things. I don't
They
know.
spell
We
it funny.
ask
Yeah.
so people can figure it out. So you, the goalie people, can know what these things all mean. That's why we're here, Cam.
So if you have any more questions, you can give me a call,
I got a lot of questions.
604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790, or check us out at thehockeyshop.com. Ask me some questions about the PX4. Ask me some questions about the PX3. You can still get the L87. That's the old PX3 Lake Pads Golden Blocker, but with the nice vintage style design. Like, subscribe. Good night, Kevin.
Good night.
All right. That's great. Cam did a good job there. And I look forward to a deeper dive from Woody whenever that happens. Looking forward to being able to break it down with Woody on the ice.
Yes.
Hazard.
Maybe. I'm not optimistic.
I'm not one to criticize names, but like Hzrdus, it doesn't breed confidence to me. Now, True, don't take this as a type of slam or anything like that, please. And if you guys want to cut this out, you can cut it out. But Hzrdus doesn't inspire a good vibe to me. It's Hzrdus.
Yeah, I don't know who it's Hzrdus to, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Again,
I got nothing.
if you're hearing this, they took the option to leave it in. So I thank you for that. The parent segment with David Hutchison is a staple of the podcast nowadays. What do you? Oh,
It's not just with me. It's everybody can chat.
Speaking of Hzrdus, let's talk about being a goalie.
good
parent.
point.
There you go.
What's your take this week?
Well, I mean, look, guys, everybody can chime in here, but as you know, I lurk in some of these Facebook parent groups and I accept questions from parents at ingoalmag.com if you'd like to send in a question. And I tend to answer some of the questions on the Facebook group. Don't usually point out who I am or where I'm from, but just give my thoughts.
Anonymous.
And well, it's not so anonymous, but I'm not just, pounding my chest saying, hi, it's David from InGoal Magazine.
Anonymous D.
I'm just another goalie parent. And sometimes you see questions that spark a lot of emotion. And this week, I wouldn't say this is emotion, but I could see excitement amongst parents as somebody asked the question, how do you all track the shots in your goalie's game? And I pictured, soon as I saw that, the parents standing on the glass in the corner, watching their kid play with an app or with a piece of paper or whatever. And there were a ton of answers in there. So I thought I'd get in. But before I do, what are you guys thinking? I mean, can't use my answer.
Can I be honest? My first response,
Yeah.
you said, like, popped into my head.
Yeah.
Was like, y'all are really doing this?
You count the shots in your men's league game.
This
No.
is true.
And
he goes snaptastic if they get it wrong.
I just complain when they're blatantly wrong.
Well, yeah. Hey, and to me, that isn't even really my answer yet, guys, but that's part of it, because as soon as you train goalies to count shots and worry about it, like Woody, they end up spending half the game looking at the scoreboard, getting angry. I've done it too. Let's face it, getting angry that I didn't get credit for that one, or there were 3 shots there and they only gave me 1. And it distracts you from the game, but that's not really my answer.
You know what screws me up when they count shots is I start working on my save percentage. I'm like, ooh, this is gonna hurt.
You start calculating.
This is gonna hurt.
Well, I'm up to 12. I can let the next one in, and I'm okay.
Exactly.
100%. We've all done that. I gotta say, my favorite one was, I knew I was playing against far too young an age. It was 3-on-3 a few years ago, when at the end of the game, and we'd gotten absolutely pumped. It was the game where I actually asked the referee if he knew what the defibrillator was. And the guy at the other end actually came up to me and said, how'd you think I played?
What?
And I'm like, dude, I'm just like hanging in there. He's like, oh, it's okay. My dad's upstairs in the bar and he's videoing the whole thing and counting the shots, so I'll look at it later. And I'm like, I'm too old for this, man.
I have seen parents use, those clickers, like bars or clubs will use to keep track of your head count going into whatever event. I've seen that where they keep track, and you don't have to have a running list, or you're not looking down and losing track of the game. So that's an interesting one.
No, it is for sure. And look, I get it because I've done it. I've used paper, spreadsheets, different apps, and I've been the guy in the corner counting the shots. And one of the reasons I think all of us want to count the shots is, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, we want to do something to help. Our kid maybe is on a team without a goalie coach. They don't have any support. Nothing's being reported. And so it's at least something you can do. Hey, here's where you were after the game. Some parents go so far as to track where the shots were taken from or so on. But I'm not a big fan of it. Having looked back now of 10 plus years as a goalie parent, I'm not a fan of it. And if I were answering it straight up, I'd say the best method of doing it, Brian DeCord has an app, Stop at Goaltending's Game Day. It does give you a much better picture of the quality of the shots and the sort of stuff that you hear Kevin talking about with NHL goaltenders. You can track a little bit about that. But even then, I really only use it every now and then, and only retrospectively. I pick and I choose, because sometimes, your son or your daughter comes home and they're really down because they gave up 6, 7, 8, 9 goals, whatever it might be. And stop it. If you really know that they had a great game, it's a good way of going back and saying, yeah, but here was the shot quality. Here's how many the app thinks you should have let in. And you actually did really, really well. And that's got a place. But day to day, guys, I'm not a big fan of it. Looking back, and here's why. All the mental training experts say to us, focus on the process, don't focus on the results. And at the end of the day, save percentage and goals against average are results. They're not anything to do with the process. And I even hate those stats on their own as it is, guys, but they're results just as much as goals are. And I know a lot of us are really excited when our kid has a 90% save percentage and we want to tell them that. But I would ask, do you happily report to your kid when their save percentage is 60 or 70 in a game? Or do you just think that they're not going to recognize that you chose not to bring it up that day? It's just, to me, I don't think it's a good way to go. And frankly, those save percentages at the minor hockey level, I think they mean next to nothing. You've got a 3.5-foot goaltender defending the same net that NHL goaltenders are defending. You've got shooters who develop at a different rate than goaltenders who dominate the game like you don't see in the National Hockey League. And I don't know that those save percentage even mean much anyway. But here's what I would say. I know you want to help. I know you want to be there for your kid. So learn a little bit about the game. Maybe you're just doing it by talking to your son or your daughter after their sessions with a goalie coach or their practices, or you're reading InGoal magazine together, and focus on the process after a game with them. So maybe ask a question like, what did you learn today? Was that fun out there? What was fun? What did you think you did really well? Give me a highlight from your game and let's talk about it. Those are process things. Did you do something in the game today that you learned in a practice recently, or you learned from your goalie coach? Or maybe if you've learned enough from reading InGoal or listening to the podcast, you can say to your son or daughter, tell them about a highlight you saw. So, hey, that was awesome. On the power play in the second period, I saw you skated across to the guy on the back door instead of sliding. Or I loved how you were really patient on this particular shot, or you look super focused in your warm-up. Those sort of things that lend themselves to having a better game down the road, I think are so much more important than focusing on the shots. So celebrate the process, guys. Don't count the shots. Don't count the save percentage. I don't think they mean much. I know you're trying to help. If you don't agree with me and you want to let me know, parents@ingoalmag.com. And if you agree with me, let me know too, because I'd love to hear a little bit more. What do you think, boys?
When do shots start to matter? Like, when should you sort of buy into that? At what level? Or age?
None.
Well, you look at the shot clock all the time.
Honestly. Sure, they're there all the time and we have them, but it's also absurd. Like, honestly, what does a 90% save percentage mean if your team gave up 57 shots and 25 of them were grade A's? It's absurd. It has to be about shot quality, and you don't even get that, frankly, with a lot of the public stats at the National Hockey League level. So why do it? You've got to focus on the process. And for me, with a son playing major junior hockey, trying to find his way in that league for the first time, I still have to remind him of that. And I don't tell him how to play because he's got a goalie coach and we stay away from that. But if he's feeling down because he only came out with an 850 that night, you can talk about, but let's evaluate the situation that you were facing there. And it's not to make excuses, because there's other nights, frankly, when maybe it should have been a 920 if we want to go with standard stats, but it was a pretty easy night, and maybe there was a lapse in judgment in a few places. But those numbers, you've got to put them into context for a goaltender. They just don't mean anything on their own.
I was about to accuse Hutch of being way too fluffy and, peace, love, and he's on the island over there where they wear Birkenstocks. But I'm kind of with him. And the thing that jumped to my mind is I do a ton of radio now in Canada, different stations, different markets, talking about goaltending. And they'll ask me about a goalie's save percentage. And I don't know. I don't look at it. I don't even look. For the longest time, I have eliminated goals against average from my stories. And sometimes my editors at NHL.com reinsert them because it's a team stat. Increasingly, we're recognizing that save percentage is the same. I don't even look at who's got a 922. I look at adjusted numbers. I want to see what it is relative to the shot quality face. And so I guess my answer then to parents would be, if you feel like you absolutely need to know because you just can't help it and you have to and you want to share that information, then I would invest in, Stop It's app so that at least you can add some context. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be clear sight analytics, but at least add some context to the quality of chances they're facing so that you can adjust that save percentage relative to that. And even then, to Hutch's point, this reminds me actually to bring it back to the Canucks, Darren, a conversation with Casey DeSmith at the beginning of the season. His save percentage drops in the NHL. We're 4 years removed from the average save percentage, or 5 years removed from the average save percentage in the NHL being 915. And now it's right around 900. And yet we still judge goalies as good or bad as to whether they're, if you're at an 899, you're sub 900. Yeah. You're not good. Sub 900 5 years ago wasn't good. Sub 900 now is right around league average.
I wouldn't mind being an average NHL goalie.
Yeah, exactly. And so, some of the historical, use a baseball term, the Mendoza line is shifting on an annual basis, even at the highest level of the sport. How the hell are we supposed to know what's good and what the averages are in minor hockey where none of that is tracked? It's largely irrelevant. And if I was going to do it, I would want to do it with as much context as possible. And so, I would probably invest in an app that allows me to do that. And this is not a shameless plug for the Stop It app. No. But that's the one that does it.
And what's worse that I hear some of your colleagues using in media, Woody, is they'll pull out a save percentage for a game.
Yes.
Maybe you could argue over a season, it would all even out
Hutch,
in terms of the games that are
this has been a trend in the last 2 years.
It's because everybody thinks maybe I can analyze goaltending. Yeah. Oh, he only put up an 850 yesterday.
In a single game.
Stupid.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Well, again, we can. That's what I love about ClearSight. I can go pop in the next morning and look and be like, yeah, he gave up 4, and there's been a couple where the expected are 6.
Yeah.
Demko had a game this season early in Philadelphia where they lost 2-0. He was brilliant. Everybody recognized it. Nobody was blaming him. But the Flyers generated 7 goals worth of offense. Or Casey DeSmith. Again, to go back to that example, he gives up 8 in a 10-7 loss. And you got to stop the odd high danger chance for sure. He did not have a great night, but there were 5-on-3s in there. And what is judged as a bad, of course, we're going to judge 8 goals against as a bad goaltending performance. He didn't give up a single bad goal in there. There wasn't a weak goal in the bunch. So if you don't have that context, it's really hard to stay away from the narrative-driven conversations.
That's a good example too, right, Woody? Because even if you don't want to get into was that a hard shot or not a hard shot, and how do we evaluate it with save percentage, 5-on-5 and 5-on-3 are not the same. But those shots count exactly the same in your save percentage, and quite frankly, same with 3-on-3 overtime.
Oh, 3-on-3. Now we're talking. This is a whole nother rant I'm going to have to go on. 3-on-3 overtime. Save percentage and what that should not be a part of an NHL.
It's insanity.
Percentages.
Yeah.
It's a different sport. It's a different game. It's a totally different game. It's 2-on-0s and 2-on-1s and from one night to the next.
And the 5-on-3 is even crazier, frankly, but
but a little more part of the game. That's why we do lean a little bit on 5-on-5 save percentage as well. That's a stat people look for when they're trying to evaluate goaltending. But again, at the minor hockey league level, nobody's doing that.
It's nuts.
Nobody's adding that context. So maybe you are doing a disservice by tracking the shots and trying trying to measure based on standards of the best league without adding the context that the best league has available.
Yeah. And again, I'll just say it again. I understand why parents want to do it because I've done it myself, and you're trying to help, and that's awesome. But maybe even if you're going to keep doing it, next game, look for 2 really good things your kid does in the game that you want to highlight. And I don't mean the unbelievable backdoor glove save. Of course, we all celebrate those things, but let's look for a few process-driven things in a game that you can really pat them on the back for.
And next time you see a media person cite the individual save percentage from that game, just remind yourself that person probably doesn't understand the position and they're trying to be cool or sound smarter than they actually are. Because it's ridiculous doing a save percentage for an individual game. That's the process. I want to represent the American listeners. Process and the process.
Geez.
It's said different. I don't know. I don't know why it's said different.
Tomato.
I know. It's
Yeah.
weird. But when I first moved to Vegas, I would say process, and they would like, you're Canadian. So now I'm process driven. Let's get into our feature interview with this week addresses USA Hockey with the director of goaltending, Steve Thompson. There's some really cool stuff coming up with USA Hockey.
Yeah, Director of Goaltending Development, Steve Thompson from USA Hockey. They have a symposium coming up. We're going to get into that in the interview. But I think the best tease I could give for this interview, there's a ton. Listen, at the beginning, folks, there's a lot of just information. I think it's valuable information about this event and about why it matters. And you might want to take part in it. The invitation is open. We're going to make sure we have in the show notes links to register for the symposium and more details on it. But the best tease I can give you for why you should listen all the way to the end is I actually posed to Steve a question that was asked on the parent segment just a couple of weeks ago. And I'm just gonna leave it open-ended. I'm not gonna get but let's just say that the answer, based on how other sports view how they do things compared to hockey, involved the world, basically cited child abuse. That what we do to goaltenders sometimes is like child abuse. Make sure you listen for that answer, if not for all the other great information about what's going on with USA Hockey and why we're seeing, we talk about save percentage. I may not look at the list very often, and I may use the adjusted numbers instead. But I can tell you when I do look at the list, man, is there a lot of Americans at the top of it.
I think it's a little odd, though, that you guys talk such extensively about the goaltending position with the goal horn going off in the background.
Oh, yeah. My apologies, folks. If you're wondering what the hell's going on in this interview, I was recording it. It sounds like it could be I recorded this interview during a Canucks game, although given the amount the goal horn goes off, it would have to be the Minnesota game. It's actually, I was at the rink. It's true, at Rogers Arena on a game day. There was a adult fantasy camp going on, and evidently the goaltending wasn't all that great in it because we got a national anthem in the background. We got a lot of goal horns.
Well, careful, Woody. Woody, you know nothing about shot quality because you were focused on the interview. So the goaltending might have been great.
Yes,
true.
They might be InGoal members down there on the ice too, Woody. So careful, buddy.
It could have all been breakaways and 2-0s. I wasn't watching it, but you will hear it. I could hear it. It's in the interview. But the good news is, through all of it, you can also hear Steve Thompson, including what directors from other sports said about the way hockey treats its goaltenders, quote unquote, child abuse. Really excited to welcome back. Welcome to the InGoal Radio podcast. Steve Thompson from USA Hockey. You and I have talked so much that I felt like it was a welcome back. Really excited, oversight on my part, which we're going to correct now, to have you on the podcast to talk about some of the things you've got going at USA Hockey in the goaltending world specifically, but also one in particular, the symposium that's coming up. Let's start there. Let's start with, I know you've participated in other symposiums. Why was now the time for USA Hockey to run its own, and what can people expect?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's funny you mentioned that it feels like I've been on the podcast before. I actually feel like I've met you before. This is the first time I've ever seen you. I've talked to you on the phone so often that I feel like we've seen each other in person. We've done all these things. So this is a lot of fun to get together. And again, hopefully we'll be maybe at a symposium in person here in the future. And
that would be very nice. Now you know why they say I have a face for radio and why we don't use video on the podcast.
Exactly. But yeah, getting back to your question here, we've been really working hard at USA Hockey to try and grow goaltending to make this more of a sense of purpose for the whole country. We use this terminology, Goalie Nation, and we mean that. We really want everybody in the country and in the nation to feel like goaltending is a priority and that we're going to support our goalies, our goalie parents, our goalie families. And so we've seen some of these Scandinavian countries that have done such great jobs. I've had the opportunity to participate in a few of these now, and the time is now. We need to start to provide more resources for our goalie people across the country. So that's really the genesis of this project.
Okay, so in terms of that, where does the symposium fit? Because you have been working towards providing more resources for goalies through goalie coaching and goalie coaching certification programs already. How does the symposium tie into that? How much of this is building the community and how much of this is development?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because that was a huge part of this discussion. And so just some history on how USA Hockey's coaching education program has started. When they held their first ever coaching symposium, it was welcome to anybody that wanted to learn more about how to be a great hockey coach. And this was back in the 70s. There was not this 1 through 5, and you had to have the sequential order to earn the opportunity to go to the level 5 like it currently is. And so we debated that a little bit because we have had our bronze, silver, gold goalie coach education course for probably 10 years now, getting close to it. And so we debated, do we want to have this national symposium just be for our gold standard coaches and have it be really elite and really exclusive? Or because it is the first one, do we want to make this really inclusive and really anybody that is a USA Hockey member is welcome to attend this? You don't even need to be a coach. You can just be a parent, a kid, anybody that wants to come and learn more about goaltending. This is the place for you. And we went towards the latter. We decided that we want this to be, we've been calling it kind of Goalie Con. We want this to be the Comic-Con of goaltending. We were expecting people to be wearing their goalie masks and bringing their favorite equipment. And it's just going to be so cool and fun. And for those that love goaltending as much as we do, it's going to be a lot of really passionate people there just to bring positive change to the position.
Okay, now there's multiple parts to the symposium. There's presentations that are more of a, development in focus, but then also an expo where you're going to bring in voices, displays, equipment companies, I'm imagining. Hopefully InGoal magazine there as well. We're working on that behind the scenes. Walk me through, maybe let's start with the expo side of things and where the focus is there and what people can expect if that happens to be the one thing they decide to take part in.
Yeah, so the expo is really going to be the most inclusive part. That's going to be from noon to 6 p.m. on Saturday, June 1st at the St. Paul Event Center in Minnesota, and it is welcome to anybody. You come to the St. Paul Event Center and you are going to see the latest and greatest in goaltending equipment, goaltending apparel, anybody that somebody in the goalie world makes and wants to share with the goalie world, please reach out to me. We'd love to have you there. And so that is going to also be our entertainment sector where we're planning on bringing in some really fun speakers, whether it's NHL alumni players, NHL alumni coaches, international alums. We've got a lot of great speakers lined up, and we want that to be there's going to be some informational pieces there for sure. And I think a lot of our coaches are going to take a lot from these conversations, but we really want those conversations more general so that people are excited to be there, whether they're a coach or not. And another goal of ours for that day is to reach different generations. So for instance, we know a lot of people in our country were moved by the Miracle on Ice. And to potentially see a Jim Craig or a Steve Janicek is going to be a really cool moment for some of our folks that grew up and remember that. For our more modern kids, they might know of the Miracle, but they might think of it just as a movie and not even have that relationship. So to have some current NHL goalies there are really going to hit the mark for our youngest kids to meet with some of their heroes that they currently see on TV. And that's our goal right now, is to be able to have enough cool people from different generations. So no matter who you are or what your passions are, you're going to meet somebody that you really like and look up to.
Okay, so we don't quite fit the cool people bill, but I'm hoping we can still get in. Now, the other side, the presentation side. I know the roster is still being built, but what kind of things can people who, if they are USA Hockey members, as you said, you don't need to be a certified goalie coach to attend these, to go and expand and learn. I think we hear a lot at InGoal magazine from goalie parents who want to learn more about the position so that they can be a resource to their kids, not necessarily be, thumbs on, controlling every aspect of their development, but have some knowledge so that they can be of assistance and point them in the right directions or find them the right voices. What kind of things can maybe people expect, and who can they maybe expect to hear from on those presentations?
Yeah, so before we get there, I do want to mention, if there's anybody listening to this that is international would like to attend, we're certainly not going to have you be here. So I don't want anyone to feel like, hey, I'm from Canada, or I'm from Finland, or wherever you might be coming from, and you're not welcome at this event. This really is a celebration of goaltending. I'm saying this all the time at international events. I feel strongly that 364 days out of the year, we're all on team goalie, no matter where we're born. And then that one day that we're playing Canada or Sweden or Finland, then we're both rooting for our home teams. And it's awesome. And we love that. And we want a 0-0 game going to overtime from our goalie family. But we're certainly not trying to hide anything from other countries. This is going to be collective. One thing that I've learned from Thomas Magnuson with the relationship that we've built is that he is so willing to share. And he says this every time that we have great conversations. He loves to share because every time that he has conversations with different people, he ends up learning so much himself that it's a benefit for Sweden to be so open and honest with what they're up to. And I really love that stance. So we're trying to mimic that as well. As far as content goes, again, we know that there's going to be a diverse group of people. We've already seen this from the current registrations. We've got some great people that manage the tri-goalie space, and they run tri-goalie for free events and 8U hockey and 10U hockey. So we want to make sure we're bringing in experts that really know how to manage entry-level sport and how to get kids really excited and coming back to the rink. We also have coaches on the far end spectrum. We have NHL, AHL, NCAA coaches that are already registered as students. So we want to make sure that if they're really trying to refine that high performance craft, that we're going to bring in some speakers for them. So we are planning on every level under the sun having some options so that, yes, everyone's going to get the cool, fancy speakers that we all know on TV and enjoy, but maybe there's some other people that are really great at certain areas of the game that you might not know their name, but they're going to have some really great opportunities to share. And so again, hopefully everybody gets a little bit of what they need and what they do.
What's the plans for this in terms of big picture? I mean, we know about, and maybe some people don't, so we'll walk them through it. Like there are already all these different facets of goaltending development in the United States. You talked about the bronze, silver, and gold level coaching certification. I think everybody knows about the U.S. National Team Development Program. You've also got your annual national goaltending camp, used to be called the Warren Strelo Camp. Where does this fit with that and with the desired goals, the other sort of, it's not necessarily a program as it is a mission statement of 51 and 30 and having more than half of the minutes played in the National Hockey League and the PWHL be by American goalies by the year 2030. Where does the symposium fit into that? And how often do you plan on running it?
So this symposium really represents 51 and 30 at every level. And I mentioned this on the article that people may have seen recently. 51 and 30 to me, although it is directed at the highest level from a mission statement standpoint, we really mean, and when we say 51 and 30 as being the world's best, and that we're motivated by that statement is we want to be the world's best at 8U. We want to be the world's best at 14U. Now that's going to look really different. The world's best at 8U is not winning an 8U national championship. It's not 8U travel hockey with 5 A's behind it. Being a world-class 8U hockey coach in our mind is making sure that you have 100% retention. Your wins and losses record may have been 1-22, but if you have 22 for 22 on kids coming back to the rink the following season, you are a very successful 8U coach. And that's what we're really trying to brand, is that there's these 3 different stages. There's the try, the develop, and the master class, and 51 and 30 sits in there for all those. So the things that we're trying to measure and where this hit home for the symposium, at the try stage, our goal in 51 and 30 and to be the world's best is to make sure that our goalie population is 10% of our hockey population. So on a traditional roster, you have 20 kids. You usually have 2 goalies. On, let's say, maybe a younger or more recreational roster, you maybe have 10 kids, 1 goalie. We want to try and measure our goalie numbers against our hockey population numbers and see if that's 10%. We know right now that we're way off that mark. We do have some shortages, so we're going to work really hard to make that be a metric we're trying to hit. For the develop stage, that middle tier, our measurement for 51 and 30 is having at least 1 rostered coach on every staff in the country that has at least their bronze. So at least there's somebody on each bench that knows enough about goaltending just to help them put their gear on correctly, or to think about them when they're designing drills in practice, so that these goalies are not just shooter tutors, but they're actually a valued member of the team. And then the master class, that highest stage, that's the 51 and 30 that most people recognize. That's the one where we want to have 51% of the NHL and the PW minutes by the year 2030. But they're mutually beneficial. And sometimes people only think about the high performance side and don't recognize that we really got to do the things right at the youth hockey stage if we're ever going to meet those goals at the NHL. It's not just holding the Warren Strelo with 20 great American goalies and trying to give them some tips and tricks. It really starts before that.
Okay, so have you seen, like, that was the focus of the article you mentioned, you referenced it. I had it as my bi-weekly column on NHL.com, and we'll have a version of that up at InGoal magazine that people can read as well. We're seeing it at the top tier of the NHL. I mean, it's been a great year for American goaltenders. You look at, I kind of shifted since I wrote the article, some guys up, some guys down, but, whether it's Connor Hellebuck, Anthony Stolarz, Jeremy Swayman, Thatcher Demko, Jonathan Quick, like at the top of the National Hockey League, when it comes to save percentage, there are a lot of American goalies, whether it's a guy like Quickie towards the end of his career, a guy like Joseph Woll just starting up, Thatcher Demko in the middle. Talking to some of those guys, they feel like their experiences, even Casey DeSmith, who's a little older, wasn't at the NTDP, but did participate in one of the first Strelos. They feel like those programs when they were kids are playing a role in the success you're seeing at the National Hockey League level. Do you kind of feel like it's working?
Yeah, we're really inspired by this because forever, and this is no disrespect, I think it's just relative to everybody likes what they know. And so few people have played goalie before, so they just don't relate to it as often. It's just not on the front of their mind when they're thinking about different things. And forever, I felt like when we would bring up some goalie initiatives, it kind of just going to get waved at. Like, yeah, you're the goalie guy. You're always fighting for goalie stuff. But recently, within the last few years, I have a lot of colleagues and a lot of people across the country that don't have a goalie background that are really fighting for these initiatives. The amount of coaches that we now have on our bronze and silver, when we started this thing 6-7 years ago, we would always ask who's a current goalie parent, former goalie parent, current goalie coach, former goalie. It was like 90% of the class always had ties. And there'd be the token 10% that we'd always be like, thank you for being here. You're going to be the one that changes the needle, moves the needle. That's changing. We're now seeing about a 50-50 of people that are seeing this as an initiative that they want to get behind, regardless of what their background is and their ties to it. So we're really inspired that the message is starting to be heard and that this is going to start to really snowball as we get more people pulling on the rope.
Okay, and that fits into making sure that every team has somebody with goalie experience, that stated goal. Were you ever tempted? Was there ever a temptation to just mandate it? To just say, hey, listen, you got to take the bronze program if you're going to be a coach of any type, with minor hockey in the United States?
I would love to. Sweden does that. So Sweden has...
Oh, do they? I didn't realize it was mandated.
They not only have a mandate, they actually fine their teams if they don't have it. And it's all the way up to their pro league. So the equivalent in Sweden is if an NHL team didn't have their gold, we would actually fine the NHL club and they would pay us that would then go to goaltending development. And the minute that they were back in compliance and every NHL goalie coach had their gold standard certification, then they would no longer have to pay that fee. Now, we're not nearly in a place to do that yet, but what a dream that would be if we could have the ability to make sure that all of our USHL, NCAA, American League, you name it, if we could make sure that all of those coaches are on the same page with best tactics on how to help their goalies out. And if not, then that club's actually going to pay USA Hockey a fine that would then pay for little gear for kids that don't have the opportunity to, or maybe stipends for some of these goalie camps that we want to run that some families just can't afford. So we are not in a place to mandate. I know that we're really strong in our department that we'd love to recommend and try and encourage people to believe in the mission without mandating. So,
well, I mean, the fact you're at 50%, that you've reached numbers where half your classes that want to learn it without having to mandate, I would think is a real positive.
It is. We are a really passionate group. We have people that only take our bronze classes in elective. Now, that's not the case for our general 1 through 4 course. So anybody that's a registered USA Hockey coach, it is a mandate that you take your level 1 your first year, your level 2 your second, etc. And the energy in those courses are different. You do have a lot of coaches that feel like they have to be there. They already know it all. Why are they doing these? They played at this level. Why are they here? And the energy is different relative to a bronze class where it's not a mandate. Come if you want to learn more. And personally, I do love that because people are so positive. They're excited. They have a lot of great questions. They're really inspired to be there because, again, it's an elective. So we've gone back and forth on, do we want to potentially go down to mandating road? And from my personal experience and some of the other coach educators that we have on our staff, I don't know if we want a group of people that maybe don't want to be there. As much as it would be great to maybe encourage a few of them to join, and maybe we inspire them to be on the team if they didn't think that they were ever going to be, it still might take away from the experience of all the people that do want to be there, that are now bumping heads with a lot of people that just feel like they're there because USA Hockey said so.
I like it. Inspiration. You talked about being inspired by seeing the success of American goaltenders. Are you seeing them inspire the next generation? We've talked in the past about, Finland. And as much as they've had sort of national programs, I would say probably predate everyone in terms of having those. They were sort of the OGs of this concept. It was Mika Kiprasov, recently retired his number with the Calgary Flames. That success spawned a whole bunch more athletes to want to be goalies. Henrik Lundqvist in Sweden, I know, massive impact there. Obviously, Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky in Russia. Are some of the successes that we're seeing in the National Hockey League, maybe it's tougher for Connor Hellebuck in Winnipeg, not in an American city, but a Jeremy Swayman in Boston. Like, are you seeing that impact inspiring the next generation to want to follow in those skate strides, so to speak?
Yeah, and there's a few things that come to mind when you bring this topic up. Number one being, we held a Five Nations tournament in Colorado Springs a couple summers ago. And part of the Five Nations event, we had all the coaching staffs from the 5 different countries that came and talked and shared ideas about what's going on within their country relative to development. And I asked a question to the 4 other nations: how are they managing this goalie shortage problem that we're seeing? Because in North America, we're seeing it a lot. There's a lot of teams that are having one goalie or no goalies, and we're getting emails often, and I'm hearing the same up in Canada. I don't have numbers to back up what's going on there registration-wise, but anecdotally, I'm hearing that there are a lot of teams with just one goalie on the roster, or maybe no goalies, and there's one kid that's playing on multiple teams. And those 4 countries looked at me kind of confused. They're like, goalie shortage? What do you mean goalie shortage? We've got a ton of goalies. And I found it so interesting that those countries don't even know what a goalie shortage is, because they have a lot of NHL goalies to look up to. And so when they think of making it to the league one day, Switzerland would be a good example. There's a high percentage of players that are goalies. And so a lot of kids there think, if I'm ever going to make the NHL, I need to be like this Swiss goalie that's ended up making it. And another thing that I learned with my time in Sweden was that it was a very prestigious position over there. You had to earn the opportunity to be the goalie. And it was a great thing that everybody wanted to do. Where in North America, it kind of feels like there's this stigma that the goalie's the crazy one, or the goalie's the oddball, or the goalie's the one that can't skate, so put him in net to protect him from the real game. And it just felt like, if we're ever going to move the needle the way that the European nations have, we have to change the conversation. The brand of the position has just been too stigmaed the wrong way. So that's kind of my soapbox on what we need to do in North America to try and grow the position. But I have seen success, and I would say that Vegas is a great example of that. If you look at Marc-Andre Fleury back in the day, what he was able to do in Vegas, when we started to roll out youth hockey in Vegas, they were asking us, how do we have a team? We've got 3,000 kids that want to play goalie, and nobody wants to be anything but the goalie. So how do we manage this roster? So I know it can happen. I believe it can happen. And we just got to hope that all these American NHL goalies become that light, like European nations have seen, to try and grow the position.
How much of it is cost too? Because the goalie may, like you said, there's stigmas attached to a goalie. One of them is the goalie's the one that's going to bankrupt his parents, right? Like, the position is really expensive. Is there, in terms of, you talk about sort of getting kids into the position, is that one of the barriers that you're working on as well?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of states in our country. California and Colorado are 2 really good examples, and I know there's others out there, so I don't want to not shed light on all of them, but California, for instance, just passed a grant where I believe any team in their state can apply, and the state will actually pay for goalie equipment, because they've seen such shortages that they're working really hard to provide resources for some of these families that do see goaltending as a cost barrier. Now, the other thing to this, I haven't done a study on this yet, but I would love to. With how expensive sticks are these days, how often players break sticks and have to rebuy new sticks, I'm not even convinced that goaltending is any more expensive than being a player. Now, that's just an anecdote, and I would love to actually get some data behind it. But I think, again, that the numbers might be different if we actually looked into it, instead of just always quoting that goalie care is more expensive. You don't really break your goalie stick. You're not having to buy another $300 stick 2 or 3 times a season. that adds up to goalie pads. You only buy those once every 2 to 3 years. I'm not sure that the cost is as much as in reality as we make it sometimes.
I think we need to maybe do something about the $450 goalie stick a little bit too, with all due respect to the companies making them, because that's not helping.
For sure.
You have seen some examples, though, when we talked before about the inspiration. It's interesting to hear the Marc-Andre Fleury story because, of course, he's not American, but it didn't matter. Just the way his personality comes through and the way he was marketed and just who he is as a person inspires people. In Boston, we see Swayman and Allmark and that relationship. You've seen him on a regional basis as someone who's from Alaska inspire the next generation as well.
Alaska's a great example of right now where we have 2 athletes in the NHL, both goalies, one being Phoenix Copley, one being Jeremy Swayman. And then probably our next star who's on the brink is Isaiah Seville, who's not played a game yet with Vegas, but he's been pretty darn close. There was a headshot in the third period that we all thought for sure he was getting his opportunity to go in, and it just didn't work out. But I do think that success follows success. When they have role models to look up to, they believe they have an opportunity and they want to be like their hero. And there are a lot of kids in Alaska right now that they see 3 individuals as an opportunity to make the league. And a lot more goalie registrations right now relative to a few years ago when maybe Scott Gomez was the guy they always were looking to as the opportunity to be in the league one day. So I do see chances for more opportunity given more success.
Scott Gomez, a guy I know actually really well. First ever hockey story I wrote in my backyard, South Surrey, where the Surrey Eagles were. Seriously, where he coached, covered him in the NHL, covered him in the ECHL. He's actually back now coaching here in Surrey at the BCHL level. So that one definitely rung a bell for me.
Gomer's the best.
He is, absolutely. How much give back are you getting from these guys? Like, I know, for example, when you run the national program, there used to be more of a mentorship. I know that's tougher in this day and age, post-pandemic, to necessarily get guys, but I know guys like Alex Nedeljkovic, who's another name, like in the top 20 in save percentage in the NHL with American roots and ties to the NTDP. I know he was back. Like, how important is that to sort of have, when you get to that higher level, have guys who have made the final step there to inspire, mentor, and work with and talk to that next generation coming up, the Trey Augustines of the world?
Yeah, no, these guys have been incredible. I mean, Nedeljkovic came to our national goalie camp, the former Strelo camp, a couple years ago. Trey was actually one of the members there. I'm guessing he was probably 17 at the time. And Ned gave one of the most heartfelt speeches to this group of kids about the ups and downs he went through when he was in the American League trying to crack the NHL and having unbelievable seasons at the American League level, but just due to the logistics of the game, never getting that opportunity, but not giving up. And it was so great for all these kids to hear that their heroes too have these challenges that they have to work through, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel when they maybe aren't getting the minutes that they expected, or they are injured and they're trying to come off of, rehab, all these different things. And, another situation, Casey DeSmith last year, he came to our 15s national goalie camp. So we actually have 2 additional camps that we didn't mention in that article. On our girls and boys side at the 15s age, we have a 3-day goalie camp that leads into the national camp for all the rest of the 15-year-olds. And Casey came out last year with a bunch of 14, 15-year-old goalies. For 3 days, he put his gear on. He was a coach. He was a mentor on the ice. He was mimicking the drills in his gear. Absolutely no ego. To be too cool to do that. Was such a rock star with the kids, such a great kid, such a great coach to these young kids. So that's a big part of this. We're actually looking to see if Trey Augustine is available to do that this summer. We've talked about potentially bringing in Dustin Wolf as another smaller goalie to be a mentor for kids that maybe feel like they're never going to make it because they're not an exact height that the NHL is looking for. So we're always trying to find great role models that maybe break the norms and show kids, hey, you've got an opportunity here. Just keep going, keep working hard. This is an example of what you can be if you keep doing it.
And like you said, it's too early to know who's going to be still playing potentially, or how their seasons go and whether their availability. But it sounds like if you can, you'll have maybe not necessarily those names, but there will be names that have been through the program that'll be a part of the symposium events as well.
And all the NHL guys have been so good about it. And even our women's national team alums, anytime we ask, they're like, I would love to be there. If I can, I will. And sometimes they have conflicts. There's so much that goes into their summers, and they do have a really strenuous winter season. So we get it, but they've always been willing to, if they can't be there in person, maybe send a little video and then we can share it. Or we've even had, we had Otter one time on a last minute because we had somebody that dropped out. He was driving to his lake house. We texted him 10 minutes later. He's on his phone on Zoom talking to 24, 15-year-old goalies about his experience on his way to the lake house. And so, these guys have just been great. We're so grateful that, Otter, another thing that we're really proud of, he has the USA Hockey logo painted on his mask, on the back of his mask. And we feel that how can we make sure that every American goalie that comes through our programs feels so a part of the family that they're moved to paint that logo on their mask. They really feel like they're a part of this family, because they are. But not always do they feel that way based on how certain circumstances happen in their career. And so we're really trying to provide enough resources that they feel loved, regardless if they're getting the minutes they want or not when they are wearing that USA jersey. And we feel that if our third string goalies on some of our teams can feel just as much a part of the team as the one that's in the net with the bright lights and the gold medal game, then we've done our part in making sure that everybody feels loved and supported.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. This is a parent question we had.
Yeah.
And I didn't warn you on this one. I probably should have. But we had this parent question. It was part of, we've got a new parent segment going. We had this one a couple of weeks ago. And you mentioned goalie shortage. So for some teams, it's not going to be a problem. Yeah. But and I apologize for not knowing this in advance. But where are you at as an organization? And I know it will depend on the age group. But in terms of when you do have two goalies, how you split the net, can you mandate it? Can you prevent one goalie from sitting and watching a whole bunch of time? With Alex Auld, who played in the National Hockey League, was coaching up here. His son's not a goalie, but he coached on his son's team, and they actually split within the game where the kid would come to the bench, and it was great because there's Alex Auld to say, hey, what did you see here? And this is what I saw. Maybe try this. And then to be able to go back in 10, 15 minutes later and execute it. So, we do get this question a lot from parents because that is one of the things. Hey, I just drove 2 hours to take my kid to a game and watch him sit on the bench. How do we find a better balance? Where's USA Hockey on that one?
I'm so glad you asked this question. This is probably the most passionate item that I am about everything we do in goaltending right now. We have 4 foundations that we teach in every one of our coaching education courses right now as it comes to player or goalie playing time. Number 1 being every youth hockey player should play hockey when they go to the rink. In goaltending, we've always understood that it's okay for the kid to drive 2 hours and sit on the bench with a clipboard or open the door to be a quote unquote good teammate. But when we talk to other sports within our country, they say that's like child abuse. How would you ever have a kid play youth sport and not actually play? This is insane to them. They can't wrap their head around how we've normalized this and made it appropriate. And so we strongly feel if you're a youth athlete playing a sport you love, you should play every single time you go to the rink. The second foundation is we want to make sure that there's age-appropriate time under tension. It's a reality of the position. It is emotionally and mentally challenging. And as you mature, you can handle more of that. But we have way too many young kids that play full games by themselves, and they have to weigh the weight of the world on their shoulders of the wins and the losses. And we see it. If you let in 6 goals and your team loses, you're quote unquote the loser. You're not sitting in the cool corner of the locker room. You're not invited to the sleepovers. There's a lot of social pressure that comes with these responsibilities. Help manage those times better so that as the kids get emotionally and mentally more mature, they get more minutes. The third foundation is we want more coaching. Historically, we've always thought of goalies as being late developers. It's the 28-year-old when you hit your prime, but yet the forwards can hit their prime at 22. Why would there be this 6-year gap? We feel strongly it's because we don't have the same coaching touch points throughout a youth goalie's career. When you have a goalie play the full game, they go to the net, they do their thing, they might come back to the bench in intermission, but the coach says, rah, team, let's get him, here's your water, and sends them back. If you're a forward or defender, you go on the ice, you play your shift, you come back to the bench, you get a breath, you get to talk to your coach about what went well, what you can do differently next time, and you can reapply that new information. They have multiple coaching touch points throughout every single game to get better at the game of hockey. If you could have your goalies have more coaching touch points, think of how many more interactions you'd have throughout your career and how much exponential growth would take place on all these little skills that you now get feedback from an adult every time that you get to come back and take a breath. And then lastly is the growth and retention piece. We feel so strongly that the reason that we have such a shortage in goalies is because we have a lot of cities in our country that they identify the 7-year-old as the end-all be-all for that birth year in goal. And they're going to be the only goalie on that team. And I actually blame a lot of the parents for this sometimes because they'll hamstring associations in our country and say, hey, Timmy's only going to play for the junior Bruins if he's the only goalie on the team. And the team really wants him because Timmy's great. But what the parent doesn't understand is that, in our opinion, the worst thing that you can do for a goalie is have them be the only goalie on the roster. Yes, they get a lot of playing time, but there's so much more to development than just standing in the crease. And when you can share that responsibility with a teammate, one, you get great opportunities to be that next Omark and Swayman. Managing that relationship is not easy, but the more opportunity you get to grow it, the better you will be at managing it once you have it. So these are our recommendations based on those foundations. At the 8U level, we encourage that every hockey player plays every position, every game. Quick change of cross-ice hockey, and there's opportunities for everybody to score a goal, get an assist, and make a save. And we're kind of branding that as the new Gordie Howe hat trick. We have little stickers that are made, and if every game you get your goal, assist, and save, you get that sticker on your helmet. And these kids want these stickers more than anything in the world. So historically, we would see these goalies or forwards that are, I'm full-time this, I don't want to play that. Well, the one strategy we found is that the one thing they like more than that is a sticker. They want those stickers, and those kids have so many on their helmet to represent how often they've represented the full game. So a couple things there. One, they're learning everything about the game. The best way to anticipate what your defender is going to do is to have played D long enough to know what's easy and hard about being a defender. The best way to anticipate what a forward's going to do is to have lived in the skates of a forward to know where you're likely to shoot as a lefty or righty, etc. So they're specializing later with a really great base understanding of the full game of hockey. So from a high performance standpoint, really important that you don't specialize early. And then the other piece to this is that there's that time under tension piece. There's a lot of kids that don't want to be goalie for the day, or they don't want to be goalie for the week, or they don't want to be goalie for the month. But if you send them in net for 3 minutes, that's something they're willing to do. And you could actually get a lot more buy-in if you shorten that duration in net. And those quick change equipment pads have allowed that to take place. Moving into 10U, we encourage that the goalies alternate at the halfway point of each period. So let's say it's a 12-minute period at 10U hockey in your city. Goalie A would play the first 6 minutes, and then goalie B would play the second 6 minutes. If you had more than just two, the other kids would play out for the game. And so you would always have two that would be in goalie gear that day, but the rest would be playing forward and D, and then you would alternate throughout the season as to who those two were. But that gives you 3 shifts in net each game, 3 opportunities to play for shorter segments, get coaching feedback. Moving into 12U would be full periods, alternating from the first and third to the second. So you're obviously going to have one game, one goalie is going to get 2 periods versus just the middle frame, but you're going to switch that from game to game to balance it out. At 14U and older, we would encourage splitting the game at the halfway point, and you would alternate who's the starter and who's the closer. And we're really intentional with the closer language. In baseball, being the closer is cool. You got the music, they're bursting out of the tunnel, they're going to shut down the game in the 9th inning and win it for their team. Yet in hockey, it's been the backup. Who wants to be the backup? That's the most loser language. Nobody wants to be the backup. Ugh, that just sounds gross. Why can we not empower that position where you're going to have one goalie be the starter and one goalie be the closer? Both are cool. Both are hard. Both have their challenges. Let's encourage them to learn. The other high performance benefit to this, most goalies get their start by that starter getting injured, having an off night. If you're a great closer and you prove to the team that you did your job when you got your opportunity, that opens your job to then be the starter. If they've learned that throughout their youth career, it won't be nerve-wracking when they're playing college hockey or pro hockey and have to go in. They've been doing that their whole life. It's just another day at the rink. Now, there is a high performance side to this. If we do encourage at 15 and older, if the team is more than recreational, we would encourage at the end of the year to play who's going to give your team the best opportunity to win. We believe that you would split every game at the halfway point, September through March. But let's say you're in your state tournament and you do have one goalie that gives the team a better chance to win. At the highest levels, the tier 1, we call it in our country. At the tier 1 level, we do competitive athletics is important, and the mental skills required are important to develop. But we don't want that to be seen in October. We only want that to be at the end of the year. So maybe the goalie that was the closer in April and didn't get the starts that they were hoping for, they now have a full summer to work harder to try and leapfrog that other goalie, or they have next September through April to prove to their coach that they deserve the big game and the big moments. But it shouldn't be taking place in November. So that's in a nutshell our recommendations from 8U to basically a youth goalie's career.
I love it, and I am so glad I asked that question, Steve. I wasn't planned. I'm going to throw one more at you, one more curveball potentially.
Yeah, please.
Through all the development, all the coaching that you're trying to add at every level, and further down, Sweden's model, right? You want more great goalies, create more great goalie coaches. I love that mandate and that mantra.
Yep.
How do you avoid creating cookie cutter how do you avoid making them all the same? And this is a question that actually comes from some of the NHL guys that have been in the program, that praise the program, that they're not saying it's happening, but when they hear about expanded programs, they worry about it. Because for them, they used to work with, for example, Thatcher Demko's he'd go to travel tournaments, and his dad would find him a local coach, and he'd go on the ice with him, and he'd take something new away from him. How do you maintain that evolution of the position and give them the tools without making them all the same? I'm not sure that should be a bad thing, but there are some people that worry about that. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, we're very worried about that. I would say this is the tightrope that I'm currently trying to walk. I've been accused lately of not being an ally to goalie coaches because I feel like we encourage our goalies to be hockey players first that just happen to play goalie. They're not a goalie that happens to play hockey. And sometimes we get caught up in that. And we'll send kids to private lesson instead of practice. And we'll have them do their little goalie juggling of dumbbells in the gym instead of squatting a bar and getting strong as an athlete first. And I think that we've sometimes swung that pendulum way too far into specialization. And we forget that we are hockey players. We are team members. We do have a body that we need to develop strength in first before we specialize in this little technique that goalies need. And I think the same thing's fallen into place with our goalie coaches. We need to be hockey coaches that happen to have a goaltending background and not goalies on the goalie staff that only live in their world of coming to practice for 15 minutes, running a private drill, and then leaving to go to the next rink, or not being a part of the coach's discussion on drill design and practice format and all the different things that come into hockey coaching. So we've been challenging in our country that our goalie coaches be more than a goalie coach. Be a hockey coach. You have so much value to bring to your staffs. You know more about goal scoring than anybody on the rink because you've been scored on so many times in your life. Bring that to the table. Help your team get better at goal scoring. When you open those doors with your head coaches and assistant coaches, you now become a part of the team. You get a voice in the locker room, and that's going to be the biggest stride in our minds to changing the future of the position is when the drills are being discussed before practice and the goalie coach is just a part of that conversation like anyone else. And they're saying, hey, that's a great drill, but the timing between shots on that is a little too tight. I think that's going to be the wrong habit that a goalie is going to get. I think too few times that conversation is being had right now. So we've really been pushing hard for our goalie coaches to maybe get away from the blocked skill-based training and to be more about team practice and games and watching your kids play in the real live format. I can't remember the person who said it, but we've talked often about we train our goalies as if they're in the zoo, and then we expect them to perform in the jungle. And it's kind of this like zoo tiger versus jungle tiger. When you're in the zoo, you've got your food, you've got your water, you've got a warm place to sleep. No one's trying to eat you. And then you go to the jungle and it's chaos. And we wonder why that jungle tiger is winning every single game. And I think sometimes our goalie coaches, and I'm certainly a part of this problem, we train our goalies in the zoo. We tell them exactly where the puck's going to go. We tell them exactly where we're going to shoot. We get mad at the shooters if they miss their spot because God forbid the kid has to catch a puck that isn't in the exact location every single time. And then we send them to the jungle and we wonder why they still get beat glove side. We spent so much time in the zoo. They should be masters of their craft, but we're not training them in this space that we need to. So I've been a little bit harder on our goalie coaches over the last couple of years, and I have got a little pushback for it. But I do feel strongly that if we're going to be the best coaches for our kids, we need to be hockey coaches, not goalie coaches. And there's a space for both, but I think we need to be a little bit more married than we have been the last few years.
I was going to say, not like those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive either. Like there's still a time and a place to develop the skills, but sometimes you got to open the car door and let it go so that you know how to apply them in a real world situation, the jungle, so to speak.
Exactly. I think we all know that the balance is needed, but I think balance is just so hard for us all. We get really excited by one thing and we run with that until we hit the wall, and then we have to bring ourselves back. And I think in the goalie world right now, we were the first in the space to really work on skills training, and we ran that so far to now we're so predictable. Everybody knows when the goalie's going to drop into an RVH because the goalie does it based on where the coach tells them to do it. And now the players are starting to get to the skills coaching, and the goals against, the save percentage, the stats are reflecting that we are too predictable right now and that we need to get into the jungle a little bit. And the players have learned that the skills coaching is working, and you're starting to see a really big influx of skills coaches for the players. So I think if we're going to start to swing the pendulum the other way and start getting goals against averages to drop, save percentages to rise, we've got to start to challenge our goalies to think a little bit more within our drills and not have everything be so scripted.
That's how, like I was going to say, like unpredictability. I've talked to NHL goalies, even Robin Lehner like 3-4 years ago, kind of ahead of the curve when he talked about the importance of unpredictability on certain plays and that it becomes an asset, a skill that you need to have. I guess the question is, how do you teach unpredictability? And this is part of the answer.
We're hoping so. We know we need a new answer. Tomas gave a really great presentation in Sweden at his symposium about the history of the statistics in the NHL and then the ebbs and flows of what took place within that. And I know he feels very strongly as well that we have to start letting the environment teach if we're going to let our kids thrive in the environment. We can't have it be scripted. We can't have it be predetermined. We can't have our kids just turning their brains off. Ken Martell, who's really been a master behind the ADM model, the American Development Model, he's been running with this lately that I really believe in. It's with what we're doing at the rink, are we narrowing our awareness for our athletes or broadening? And he feels passionately that too often we're narrowing it. We tell our kids, just focus on the puck. Just do this. We narrow everything. But the real world's best athletes have a very broad experience. They understand where the play is on the weak side of the ice. They understand the different threats. They're not just solely focused and narrowed on one thing. And so again, I think we can all be better about broadening awareness within our drills and allowing our kids to think more deeply and play the game.
Okay, so for those who have heard this and their ears are perked, their eyes are wide open, they're excited to learn more, they want to be part of a symposium where these are the types of topics that are going to be discussed, they want to come say hi to Steve Thompson at an open to the public expo, where can they get more information about what's happening, about the symposium in Minnesota at the end of May and into the first day of June?
Yeah, so if you type into Google US Hockey National Goaltending Symposium, that'll bring you right to the webpage to register for the event. You can also email me, steve.thompson@usahockey.org. Would love to help you get there or answer any questions you may have on if maybe you're the right fit for this symposium or not. Again, we said at the beginning, this is meant for anyone. Anyone, doesn't matter what your background is. If you're curious about goaltending at all, come and have a good weekend with a bunch of other people that love the position too. The other question you asked earlier that I never got to was how frequent this is going to take place. And our plan is to host this every 2 to 3 years. And so we don't know for sure if this is going to be 2027 or 2026, but we do know that we're going to create enough of a runway to make it really relevant every time we host it, not be a little redundant on speakers or topics. We kind of want the environment to start to change a little bit. Maybe post-integration is way different in 3 years from now, and we have a new topic we can really dive into. So it won't be held really consistently, but we want it to be really powerful every time that it does. The other thing we want to make sure is that it's held in a different district. So we have 12 different districts across the U.S., the way that USA Hockey breaks it up. We're in Minnesota this time, so expect it to be somewhere other than Minnesota next time. So if travel is an issue that you don't want to manage, then wait, maybe we'll be in Seattle in the Pacific District one year, or we'll be in Massachusetts. Exactly. We'll make sure that we hit all the different markets over this span.
Some of you may be able to hear this. I'm hoping it's not too picked up on the podcast, but we're doing this live from the press box at Rogers Arena, where the Vancouver Canucks are getting ready to play, and there's a fantasy camp today. So as I fist pump at the idea of this thing coming to Seattle down the road from us here in Vancouver, the goal horn went off, so it was just perfect timing. Steve, I apologize for all the background noise. I appreciate your patience with that, and I can't thank you enough for all the time you spent. I think there's a lot of people
Hopefully they read the story, both at NHL.com and the expanded version we'll have at InGoal. Heard this podcast and want to get involved in this. That's a great thing you're doing for goaltenders, for the goalie union, for the goalie community. And we're excited to play a small role in it and hopefully a bigger role as we get closer to the event.
Yeah, I would love that. And I think we discussed this. If there's an opportunity to put the registration link in the show notes, or maybe we can be that way, that'd be a quick and easy for some of these attendees listeners to come and be an attendee. I will say, I think I have not checked this morning. There might only be about 50 seats left for this thing. So please, if you're hearing this, click on that thing right away if you plan to be there, because we are running out of seats fast after that NHL article.
That's good news. That means it did its job. There's actually people reading my stuff. That's a good thing.
Yes, very good thing. So I really appreciate that.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Awesome. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you again for having me.
Symposium in St. Paul, the St. Paul Symposium at USA Hockey, dealing with goaltending. That's like tailor-made for you two. I want you in Vegas. I'm disappointed you haven't been to Vegas. I look forward to you guys coming to Vegas, but St. Paul in the spring, I'm a fan.
You should come up.
I'm a fan.
Maybe you should join us there. Maybe we should all go.
I wouldn't mind that. When is it?
Late May, right into the sort of last weekend of May into first day of June or first 2 days of June. It's a 4-day event, the 1-day expo, and then the rest is sort of classroom type environments like teaching stuff. So we will have more information. Just look in the show notes, folks. If you're just automatically listening to us because it downloads, go to ingoalmag.com, click on this edition of the podcast, and you'll see in the show notes links to get into or to get your way into the symposium. The expo itself, which is like a 1-day sort of celebration of goaltending, there'll be featured guests speaking. Like I said, we're trying to get there, demonstrations, stuff from all the top manufacturers. That will be open to the public. You don't need to register for the symposium to attend that.
Symposiums, expositions. It's good. What's happening at the website right now, Hutch?
Lots happening at the website, and we hope that everybody, as part of their spring training, will end up as InGoal members. We had such a good time talking through the parent stuff, and it went on so long. I'll point out that every parent segment goes up on the website separately from the podcast. So if you just want to listen to that segment, you can head over to ingoalmag.com and listen to what we had to say as parents. There's some great pro reads as usual. Good buddies Devin Levi and Jet Greaves both have pro reads that are up there now. We were on the ice with them this summer and recorded the pro reads in person, and it was pretty cool stuff. And some great drills. There's more drills up with Thatcher Demko. Woody's always getting a chance to sit down and work with him, and goalie coach Ian Clark. Got a Winnipeg Jets drill up there with Connor Hellebuck and Laurent Brassois. There's just all sorts of awesome stuff over at the site. And again, 5 minutes a day, make it part of your summer. Another thing I thought of bringing up as a parent segment, Darren, one time was I had a parent recently ask if he could cancel his membership because his son just wasn't making good use of it. I can't get him off Instagram. I can't get him off Snapchat and onto the website. Just sit down with them. We all want to do something with their son or daughter. And I don't mean you must sit here and watch this with me. Just, hey, Johnny, I saw this cool save on here, and this Devin Levi's talking about what he did. Come see what he says. That could be a simple 3 minutes where you're just sitting on the couch with your phone, looking through a cool pro read. It doesn't have to be a study session. It doesn't have to be something that they enjoy for half an hour every day. 2 or 3 minutes times 200 or 300 days a year, guys, gets you far more value than the $50 Canadian that you're paying for an InGoal membership. And I think it's going to be of more value to your young goalies than just about anything they can be doing off of the ice.
That's a great point, Hutch. We've talked a lot to coaches about how kids don't watch hockey anymore, and that's one of the reasons they believe young goalies' abilities to read the game has sort of dissipated. They become a little too static in terms of the goalie-specific drills they do. This is a great way to just get it in small doses. You hear from NHL guys about how valuable film work is. We're not asking you to sit down for 45 minutes a day with your goalie coach like they do. This is just a couple quick minutes a day, and you will get the benefit of sort of learning how these guys see the game. And does it all apply? Like, hey, we've got a few on there with Alex Ovechkin 1Ts, queued up. Does your kid, your 12-year-old, have to worry about Alex Ovechkin? No, but there's usually depth management tips and things like that that can be transferred down to lower levels in terms of how they manage some of these plays. There was a great one with Ovechkin and Joseph Wool the other day. And as much as the focus becomes Ovechkin, for Wool, it was the pass options that Ovechkin had and how they were layered and how that affected his depth decisions. And I would argue that, maybe not at 8 or 9, but they certainly apply as you're getting up to 12 to 13. Those are all things you can bring into the game in terms of the tactics of how you manage, how you play. You will be better for understanding how the best do it.
And it is a rabbit hole that I've gone down several times in the last little while in my time away, just watching pro reads. It's you're on one and then you're on another. And I'm sorry, I got to admit to this. You click on it and it's like, there's that line where it's the link where it says skip straight to the video. Is there the written portion of it? I always click straight to the video.
That's okay. That's what it's there for.
It's totally there. You know why we do that, Darren? The reason we add the learning, the written stuff, and we show the screen caps of, what are you looking for to try is because everybody learns differently. Most kids these days, they want to go straight to the video. Most Darrens want to go straight to the video and just watch what the NHL goalie says and how he processes it. But everybody learns differently. And so we want to have a written element. Some kids learn by reading better than they do just by watching. There's different ways of retention. And we want to present it in a sort of learning format, but also give you the option, just go straight watch it. Hutch has got that great link at the top of Pro Reads where you can just basically click on Thatcher Demko and one after the other, watch his 9 different video breakdowns.
It's amazing. Hutch, we good?
Mostly.
He's still trying to figure out.
I harbor a grudge for a long time, Darren. Now, look, it's only happened once, hasn't it? Or I don't care.
Well, you
like
think it's only happened once. I'm a little more sensitive over here.
No way. I mean pulling the goalie in overtime.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I don't know how many times it's happened.
How many times we've been we've offended each other.
No, it's all good, buddy.
Okay, good. Love you, man.
My money's still on you, Darren, with that voice. You're killing him.
Oh, you should see. I've got this great tumbler right beside me. I can't.
He's got reach, but I probably have 20 pounds on him, so I got a chance.
You got to catch me first. It'll end up being a 1,500 meter race more than anything. As I run and you chase after me.
No, we'll be running in opposite directions because we're both pacifists.
Nothing like Woody. Like Woody be right in there. Snaptastic.
Snap show.
It's so good. Next time I'm up in the Lower Mainland, I'm going to come and watch Woody play, and I'm going to do the wave. I'm going to take shot totals, and I'm going to do it all in the hopes of watching him go snaptastic.
I got an idea. I think I should live stream it on Instagram so everybody who listens to InGoal can watch Woody play next time.
Oh man, the pro reads are a how-to for goalies. I would be the how not to.
But you would be like Tuukka Rask. Remember that one when he was throwing the puck pail and the stick snapping and going just off his rocker, leaving the ice one time. You could
kind of sounds like a recent Brandon Wheat Kings game, Darren.
Oh, really?
Oh yes. There was a garbage can and sticks thrown out of the ice. It was old time.
Oh, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
You know who I see in the press box on an almost nightly basis up here in Vancouver? Speaking of great stories, Ernie Punch McLean.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Our younger audience can Google that. The legendary coach of the New Westminster Bruins. There were some garbage cans tossed in that era, and he is still.
And they were garbage cans. Those were like plastic pails.
Plastic hadn't been invented back then.
Those were garbage cans, like Oscar the Grouch cans, thrown across the ice. Thanks, guys. This has been awesome. Love to be back with you. Appreciate that Steve Thompson discussion was outstanding, and check out the Hzrdus line with True, even though it gives me like a little bit of GBs. We'll talk to you next week on InGoal Radio, the podcast.